Hi, everyone.
Hello.
We are just waiting for more people to join us. We'll get started in a few minutes. Should we get started?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the second Snipêtte webinar. This time it's Interesting Histories with Paul Cathill, who you'll get to see in just a moment. First, I want to start by doing some technical instructions. We had mentioned this in the email, but you can participate in the discussion if you'd like, if you have anything to add. We're trying to make it quite informal. So if you have questions at any point, please feel free to ask them. If you have questions that are more specifically geared towards the editors at Snipêtte, you can please save those right for the end, and we'll be sure to get to you. And then also for that, you can raise your hand, press R to do that, and then hit the space bar and hold it down while you're talking. So, yeah. Great. Our author today is Paul Cathill. He's been writing for Snipêtte for a couple of years now, but he's been a friend of the publication for some time before that. At Snipêtte, he's written 6 articles over the last 2 years, mostly on topics where history intersects with other things like physics or urbanization. We discovered him through his own publication, Interesting Histories, hence the name of the webinar, where he writes almost purely about history. Sometimes it's about wars and battles, but more often it's about the more mundane things that we take for granted, like how pencils came about, or the teddy bear, or ice cream. Born in Ukraine and raised in Australia, Paul describes himself as an IT person by day and a hobby storyteller by night. He loves rare historical and antique books, and those make their way into the collection behind him, which you'll see. He loves to write, and he writes other kinds of works as well, not just historical articles, also fan fiction, flash fiction, short stories, and essays. Um, so let's say hello to Paul.
Hello, everyone.
Paul, do you have anything to add to that introduction?
Not really.
Okay. So let's just start at the beginning with like what got you interested in trying to write about history, or was there some particular topic that sparked your interest and got you into this?
Well, actually, I think what got me, if I remember correctly, I was reading Asimov book. It's his biography, Isaac Asimov biography, and he wrote so many books and articles and all the jazz, and he writes about like anything from science to history to like study of language, and he's very prolific. Pretty much I thought that I can do the same, and I start writing articles as practice for writing and just short just short articles. And plus Medium just came out at that time, and it was kind of such a good, I guess, tool to publish quickly and easily. So I just kind of started writing, and yeah, just continue writing short articles about anything I can find. And I was kind of try to do it same way as Asimov, because he like all the like his nonfiction books are written in such a like kind of very interesting, easygoing, sometimes funny way, like simple language, and like just I don't know. I found it super easy to read, so I tried to imitate him, and yeah, pretty much since then I've been trying to write all these weird articles about history and stuff.
Is there like a particular direction of history writing that Asimov took you in? Because I know that he writes a lot of what would be considered typically science fiction, but there's often a lot of elements of like sociology or history that are like woven into that. So is that something in particular that inspired you?
Not really. He usually writes about science stuff, which because he's a scientist actually, like before he became a writer. And I just did history because I like history and I read a lot of history stuff. So it's not like I don't really write same topics as he would. So I did try, but I found it much harder because, like, it just they're very complicated. History is a little bit more easier, and because a lot of sources and they're much easier to understand. While writing about chemistry or something like that, or like how we come up with measurement of the Earth or something like that, much more harder. And like I don't know, well, for me at least, it sounds very easy for him, but for me, I found it much more easier to write historical stuff because I guess because I'm more interested in it, and if you're interested in something, it's easier to write about it.
And so, having said that, what was your experience writing? Recently, you wrote about a more scientific based article for us, which was about space elevators, which is the idea of exploring space sort of the way that you would a really tall building, and that is by just building an elevator to go up into space. That's an idea that's been around for some time. And so, like, that is a more science-y topic than I've seen you typically write about. So, was that intimidating for you?
Not really, because it's very theoretical. Like there is not much of a well, there is a science involved and there is some calculation, but still, it's very theoretical, kind of in sci-fi way. Like there is studies into that, and like there's even companies who trying to build small prototypes, and there is the Japanese government actually interested in going that direction, all that jazz. But yeah, because there wasn't anything too like specific. It was much more easier. I actually got a comment on the articles. I don't know if anybody else can see them on Medium, but somebody said like, "Oh, this is all rubbish. It's all from sci-fi. This is all stupid. I don't know why you even wrote this," kind of like very condescending way. And he said that like we will travel to space and robot gonna do it. Like people never have to travel anywhere. I'm like, well, okay, that's nice. So yeah, I think treated it more as a uh, something we hope we would accomplish. Maybe we never will because there is like so many limitations. And just the idea that you have a star based in space, kind of tethered to the Earth and kind of spinning around. Maybe it is a little bit too much. But who knows? You never can predict where technology will go. Sometimes we thought people would never fly, and now we're flying everywhere. So maybe will go the same way. One day we will actually travel on elevator into the space.
And Paul, I suppose there was a kind of historical angle to that too, right? Because you were saying how the you were saying how the idea of a space elevator developed right from the time of Konstantin Tsiolkovsky. I don't know if I've pronounced his name right,
Uh,
but he developed the idea long ago, and then even today people continue to develop the idea, and it's we don't know whether we have the technological capability to build it yet, but we are slowly getting closer and closer to that point.
yeah, but no, a lot of math and theory was developed way before we can actually have the technology to do it. Like I just watched a video not long ago about space. Like the astronaut was talking, and he says that all the math they use for the navigation in space, for like all the I don't know, connecting with the with the ISS and all that stuff. Actually, all that math was written by some Russian scientist in like 18th century in some village, using candles when he was writing. And but it's now used like everywhere. So maybe it's the same thing. All these ideas, and this idea is super old right now, and was written like the first incarnation of it was written ages ago by some I don't know how people even how like scientific people, like people who love math, they just come up with stuff. I'm not the type of person, but a lot of stuff, a lot of scientific theory came out ages ago and wasn't used for hundreds of years, and now we're kind of using it every day.
Yeah, even I was finding that very interesting because I was reading your article and looking up the whole history thing again, and Tsiolkovsky had even got the design for all these spaceships before the first rocket had even launched to space.
Yeah.
So,
it's probably like fantasizing about all this stuff, and then it became real, I guess. Because we found like there's a lot of fiction about flying to the moon and space, and now we're actually doing it, and it's pretty close to how we actually do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the things that ends up being so interesting about historical things is how they get preserved over time. So one way that it happens, like you said, Paul, is that something that was created, like what have we said, in the 18th century, some math that was discovered then becomes useful now. And then there are also things that work in like a prehistoric time that just are never changed and continue to be used the same way that they are now. Like recently, they were doing some excavation and they found this tool made of bone, and a lot of the archaeologists didn't know what it was and they were very confused. And then they took it to a leather tanner today, and she was just like, "Yeah, I have the same thing here. That's what this is." So, like, for 50,000 years, people have been making the same tool out of leather. And that's another one of the interesting things, is that, like, it gets preserved in that way also.
Yeah, there's a lot of, like leather working or something. It's still the same tools since like thousands of years, even longer. Or, like making beer, I guess, too, is like, we've been making that, and wine. We've been mashing grapes for so long, and just now it's actually process is changing and getting automated. But for a very long time, well, even now people actually doing it old way, like because it feels more authentic, I guess. But yeah, a lot of stuff that we still use that been around for thousands of years.
And so when it comes to writing about like kind of prehistory, or I guess times from before there were specific written records in English. So like when you write about times like say Sparta, which is an article that you have written about, how do you go about researching something like that, knowing that all of the sources are going to be like far removed from the actual experiences?
I just try to find as many articles as I can, and then trying to piece together all the similarities, I guess, because sometimes they can contradict, or like one is like has more information, another one less, or they even like if it goes through the history, there might be like one have like two events, and another one would have like one event and second event, another one have another event in between. So just trying to kind of find as much like similarities, and then just put them together, because history is, we don't really know what was happening thousand years ago. There's just sometimes just like one source, so you can't really, you just use that source and you hope that it is at least a little bit correct. But yeah, it's usually just finding as many like all the encyclopedias, and just sometimes just people writing small articles, or some university stuff like that. Sometimes you find like research papers, and it's really hard to go through those. But yeah, just find as many sources as you can, and find like sweet middle to put it together. Because the further you go back, the less true it's become, I guess. So and I usually try to find the most kind of entertaining bits too. So it's I hope like my articles are not used in schools or anything like that. It's just I find something interesting, I try to put it together and say it in a like simple language, and more entertain people than educate them, I guess.
So I guess that gives you a lot more freedom to just follow what you want to write about, because you're not restricted by that you have to cover a certain thing.
Yeah.
So,
and I usually try to find interesting things rather than like well known.
Do you normally decide what you want to write about and then go and research it, or is it that you're just reading things anyway and then you decide, hey, that's cool, let me write about it?
Yeah, I usually read something and then I think like, oh, that would be interesting article or interesting topic, and then I research on that and then put something together.
While we're at it, do you want to tell us like a little bit more about what your process is from that, oh, hey, this looks interesting moment to your final finished article?
Yeah, it's nothing really special. Usually I find something interesting, I write it down on my notepad, and then I just like try to find as many like articles or some references like as I can. Usually like, I don't know, I try at least 5, but sometimes because like it's usually I use internet, obviously. If I have books, it's good, but these days it's like everything internet. And usually after you kind of find 5 sources, they start repeating itself, and you just see that people just take in one source and then just they kind of shuffle it around, and then like, okay, this is the same information. They just say it kind of different way. And then I print it out. I then just highlight every like all the facts I find interesting, and try to find again facts that are kind of same ones, so I know they're actually the most truest or the most kind of checked out. And then I just kind of try to put it little like bullet point what I want to write. Then I kind of write it out. Usually I go back and again check if I missed anything interesting, and just try to fill it up and try to make it a little bit funny, a little bit nice flowing. And then usually if I write for Snipêtte, I then submit it, and it gets a lot of changes. Especially because I like big paragraphs, and that's not allowed these days, so it has to be be shortened a little bit. But yeah, there's not nothing special. Just find all the sources, print it out, and then just go through it all.
I have a question. Since since you mentioned Wikipedia, what do you think of Wikipedia as a source of information, and like, do you use it as a reference or at least as a starting point to find information, or do you generally take everything you see on it with a pinch of salt?
Well, I find Wikipedia is a great thing that has like because when you research about some subject like the, I don't know, like city birds, about pigeons, right? The Wikipedia usually has like a lot of information, much more than any encyclopedia. Usually encyclopedia would be like one paragraph, and Wikipedia would have like 10 pages on the topic. So it usually like it's great summary of everything on the topic. But then when I find like interesting bits, then I'll try to search for them and find other articles and other like somebody mentioned it. And usually encyclopedia is a good way to check that it's actually true. Sometimes I don't find anything, which is, I don't know, kind of weird, and I try not to put that stuff in because I don't really sure. Because no, Wikipedia actually has all the kind of references at the bottom as well, so you can check a lot of stuff. But yeah, I find Wikipedia is a great like a summary of every single specific topic. But then like you have to check it, and sometimes you can find other interesting information somewhere else. But yeah, I find it really especially history, because a lot of encyclopedias has like very little, or it's very dry, it's like one sentences or something.
That's true.
While Wikipedia would have like bam, like there's 10,000 words on this topic. So yeah, I and a lot of interesting things I actually find on Wikipedia, because you kind of go through it and you have links, and then you kind of dive deep, and then you go into some weird direction until you find something exciting.
Yeah, I think even when I'm researching for articles, then Wikipedia works as a good starting point. But then, if when I follow the links, then I'm also more likely to find people with interesting facts which people haven't seen yet. Because in general, when people go to look it up, they'll stop at the Wikipedia page. But then, if you dive into the sources, it's got some other equally interesting information which didn't make it to Wikipedia, which can be used for an article.
Yeah, plus I try to, I'm always afraid that my article will be just reworded Wikipedia page, which I try to avoid as much as I can. So you have to find other interesting sources and facts and anecdotes.
By the way, I want to stop here and say that if any of the audience wants to participate, please feel free to raise your hand and then ask or discuss or share anything you want to.
I want to actually go back to one thing you said earlier, Paul, which is that you mentioned that you print all of your sources out. I found that really interesting because it's not something that I do, but I know it's something that some of my friends do find useful. And I want to know, what do you feel is the value for you in like looking at information on print versus on a screen?
It's just easier, I think, to read because screen is I don't know, just easier for me. But also I find it when like it's easier to mark and it's all there in one kind of stack of papers. It's easier to search through. And also when I type and I need to like check something, I don't have to like alt tab or go to other tab, or it's kind of, I can have 5 articles in front of me right now. I just put it all over my table. While on the screen, you have to go through tabs or you have to scroll, and I just find it much more, I don't know, it's much more pleasant also to work with paper than with plus it's kind of, I don't know, it's like I find it much like easier to organize rather than when it's online or when it's in some doc or Google Doc something.
And while we're on the subject of paper versus screen in general, what are your thoughts on ebooks? This is a triggering topic for some people.
I like ebooks, and I read a lot of, especially because I travel on the train a lot, and it's easier to have to read from your phone rather than from a big book, because I already carry a lot of stuff with me. But I do love books in paper format as well. I have like a big library and all that stuff, because sometimes, well, you just don't find stuff in ebook format, which is weird, especially when it's related to nonfiction. Like fiction is usually all there. Like a lot of Asimov books, you just cannot find them in ebooks, so you have to kind of dig through secondhand books and stuff. Yeah, I love both, and I read both, and I buy both. But sometimes it's just easy, especially if I read like some kind of fiction book and there's like 10 of them, and I just go one by like one after another. I don't want to buy 10 books and then where I'm gonna put it. So it's just easier to buy it all. Plus, a lot of fiction books you're just gonna read it once. So unless it's something really dear to me, I stick to ebook. But a lot of history books, especially old ones, I love to buy it in paper and to like have it on the shelf so I can impress people when they come over.
Yeah, I think read it once is something that a lot of people can relate to for ebooks. I mean, if you're only going to read something once, then it's not sometimes worth the effort going and getting a physical book. Of course, some people prefer physical books all the time. I think maybe this is a good time to stop and ask the audience, how many of you read ebooks? Uh, Maybe you could raise your hands if you read ebooks and keep them down if you don't.
Can I see?
Okay, that's 3 so far.
I think that was 4.
Somebody wanted to speak.
No, that's the raising hand for the ebooks.
If anyone has more thoughts, you can please share. I know this is a thing that people have opinions about with a capital O.
Okay, I think that was what, 5 people reading ebooks, right? Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah. Oh. Someone is unmuted.
Yeah, I think Diba, are you trying to speak?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I find myself doing a combination right now because I don't read ebooks, but I do for nonfiction look for PDFs. And so, I mean, I'm just, for my children, I'm thinking because of the, I teach history courses and I like to have them to read off printed material. As you were saying, then it's a chance for them to mark in the material, go back to it, handle it, pick it, look at it. So this last year of the courses that I did, and I think generally for my students, I do selections and I do print. So I think I'm using the source of the screen, but I'm printing it because I feel to read and reflect and process. It's another
Oops, did we lose her?
Yeah, I think so. Diba, we can't hear you anymore.
Her connection is lost, it says.
Okay.
Okay.
We'll see if she's able to come back.
Yeah. Does anyone else want to share their thoughts on ebooks?
Hi, I can say something. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Hi, Nicole.
Hi. I think for me, when it comes to whether or not I want to read an ebook or a physical book, I think it will depend on the length of the book and also the topic of the book. So I find for more informational types of books, I would rather read it on print because I know that I will want to go back and highlight it and put different sticky notes to read it again in the future when I want to reference it. Whereas for something that is a short read, I'm generally okay with reading an ebook because I'm not staring at the screen for a very long time.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. By the way, everyone, Nicole is another of our authors. You'll see her as Nicole Cooper on Snipêtte as well as on Medium. And I don't think she and Paul have met before. So, hi.
Nice to meet you.
Okay. I think Usha wants to share something, and then we have a question from the YouTube live stream. So, Usha, go first. Sorry, you're on mute. Can you hold the spacebar down while speaking?
We're not able to hear you. Oh, there you are.
Yeah.
It's gone again. Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So this is not particularly about ebooks, but about physical books. I feel for me, every book has a reading memory. And so in some way, reading a physical book is also reviving those memories. Also, I'm a librarian, as many of your young organizers would know. And for me, even reading books from the library has memories of who read it. which children that I interacted with read it. So for me, it's a rich experience to read a physical book. And I must admit, maybe it's my age, but I'm not hooked onto ebooks. Sorry. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Usha.
Okay, before we move on, I just wanted to share from my end that I have an e-reader, like the Kindle type of thing with an e-paper screen, but I don't use it for ebooks that much, but I use it for articles that I read online. So when I find an article I want to read, I move it to the e-reader and then read it on that, and that's a nice place to read those apart from on the screen, like not on a laptop or a bright screen. So
I believe we have a question from YouTube.
Yeah, I'll just read it aloud. Elise says, hi, Paul, do you get more interaction from readers when you use modern reference to historical facts? Do you see similarities in historical events and people to those today?
I guess, yeah. I mean, I don't get a lot of like not feedback, a lot of comments on my articles overall Medium. So, but yes, sometimes though I try to write about more of a kind of uncommon things. So there's usually not much of a like today and events in the past, not much like a correlation. So, but yeah, I'm not sure. To tell you the truth.
I think the piece that you've written with us that has probably done the best is one called Natural Law, which is sort of about like broader morality and like what humans in general would consider to be, I guess, the right thing to do, even when it's not necessarily legally defined, which is, I think, also one of the least historical pieces you've done for us. So, I don't know, do you feel like there's sometimes not the best space for, maybe more non-fictitious writings on Medium? Because a lot of what's out there tends to be possibly more, I guess, self-help oriented. I don't know how to define it.
Yeah.
Programming or self-help.
Yeah.
Those are two major categories.
Yeah, Medium is usually self-help and advices, unwarranted advices, a lot of them. But I think it's one of the reasons why I created my publication, because I couldn't find anything similar.
Sure.
And yeah, and I don't think historical articles are getting a lot of actual views. I mean, not as much as some of the self-help ones or political ones, like current affairs ones. But yeah, but it's still like there's a lot of people who read them and interested in them. But obviously, it's not like it's quite a niche subject.
I think that's also something that was a motivator for us when we were starting Snipêtte, is that there was not like a space that had kind of entry level nonfiction, in that a lot of like larger publications, like maybe I'm suddenly blanking on all of the names, but like things like National Geographic, all kind of tend to explain concepts at a higher level, but there's not a lot geared at getting people interested in it, or like the first flush, the kind of the ground floor level, and that's part of the reason why we started. Do you see what you're doing with history as being along similar lines of like trying to get people into it rather than telling them everything?
Yeah, definitely. It's and another reason that's why I try to find more like unknown topics, because if you just talk about something well known, it's usually like, it's not that interesting, I guess. But yeah, I started my publication to like have a place. I actually was trying to find other writers, and I never did find anybody else to write similar things. But yeah, I wanted to just a place where I can like write about these weird histories, and maybe I should have called it weird histories, but it already show like that, and have a place for people to come and read some of the stuff like that. And some of my articles actually seems like became quite popular, weirdly enough.
By the way, I just want to stop here and ask is everybody familiar with Medium, the website? Okay, I guess we can continue then. Medium is the platform on which we started Snipêtte, and now we've moved off Medium because we kind of outgrew it, but that's where we started. And Paul also runs his own publication, Interesting Histories, on that. And maybe Nicole, since you also write on Medium, do you have anything to share about your experience writing there? Because I've seen you write about mainly sports, culture, and a bit of food, which is not really what the mainstream, like highly promoted Medium articles are.
I think we might have lost her.
Okay.
Why don't we come back when she's got better internet? Anyway, go ahead, Basil.
No, Usha would like to speak, so press the space bar and speak.
Hi, Paul. Because of some internet.
You're muted again, sorry. You need to hold the space, like keep the space bar down.
Goodness. Yeah, now can you hear me?
Yeah.
So I was just saying, Paul, that I missed the first part of your talk because of internet difficulties. So my question may have been covered already. I was curious to know, like, are there particular histories that have interested you more, like, say, family histories or histories of outlandish places or histories of artifacts? Like, is there any particular theme? Sorry if you've already covered it. I missed the first part.
Yeah, I don't think we covered it, but I mostly, I don't know, I interested in like histories of like ancient history, not ancient, but like maybe 300 years and older, of countries and places, and usually from there I find interesting characters and obviously historical characters. But usually it starts with a country or a place, because there's a lot of obviously countries or nations that doesn't exist anymore, and sometimes I like dig deeper and deeper. But yeah, on a higher level, it's usually I'm interested in like countries, and from that, in many cases, it becomes characters, because you get to kings and then kind of whatever the top levels and go from there. But yeah, mostly it's I love histories of like countries, and not specifically just history, but sometimes it can be something like economy of that country, or the way they did something like a culture, or like something on those lines.
Thank you. Yes, I'm sorry I had to repeat it, but this was very interesting for me to hear.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have a
tell us a little bit about Snipêtte, Manasa, just what it is.
Yeah, sure, Deepa. We will get to like very snippet specific questions a little bit later, like right at the end. So we can say a little bit more then. But we will definitely get to it. Meanwhile, Paul, there's a question in the comments from Meena Mahajan. She says, there's a humongous amount of information on the web, even if you just follow links from Wikipedia. How do you decide that you've researched enough? I guess in most cases, there's diminishing returns. Following more and more links reveals less new info per link, but one never knows when there's a new gem around the corner.
I usually go through, because usually Google it, and usually goes through like 2 first pages of a Google. But usually when you kind of go deeper and deeper, as I said before, you find that stuff just starting to repeat itself, and you can see that people just took one information, kind of like moved it around a little bit and put it out there. But usually when I start like seeing stuff repeating, and from experience, it's first like 20 searches or something like that. Well, if it's quite like a big topic, sometimes you can have like 3 articles or 3 like mentions of something, which is like when I was doing natural law, surprisingly, I could find very little information outside of the book I read, and where it was mentioned usually would be related to law, and would be some kind of crazy article about some kind of heavy law stuff, where it would be it wouldn't be much to take from there. But yeah, usually I just search as much as I can, and when I see that I'm starting to get same things, I kind of stop. And I'm usually happy if I get like 5 good like chunky articles, like pieces of information, different sources of information. Then I'm kind of happy.
Okay.
We have one more question. Usha asks, have you traveled to the countries you cover or actually met the characters you have written about?
Sadly, not usually. I didn't travel a lot, and usually I write about more ancient stuff, so I don't get to meet anybody. But yeah, I wish I could travel, but a lot of places don't exist anymore, or they're hard to travel to.
Sure.
Okay, I think Nicole had something to say.
Yeah, sorry. And I heard my name, but I missed the that you had.
Badri, will you repeat the question?
Oh yeah, we were just talking about Medium at that point, and we wanted to ask you what your experience is, since you write about sports, culture, and a bit about food, and that's not like a mainstream Medium topic. So how did you find the response, and what made you start writing on Medium?
Yeah, so I've been on Medium for about 4 years. I would say consistently 4 years. Started around 2000, but I would say it wasn't until a year later since I started to write things more often. And then I took a break, and then I came back. And I think for me, the reason why I joined Medium was I just wanted a place to just share my thoughts, opinions. So before, I've used other blogging platforms, WordPress, and Tumblr, and a friend told me Medium, so that was mainly why I decided to check it out, see what it would be like. As far as the topics I choose to write, I know definitely a niche on which topics get the most views, and I think certain publications are also really popular that allow the readers to get a lot of views. And I've taken note. I think I've written things to try to reach that popular market, but I just felt in the end I just wanted to write about the things that I like to talk about. So that's generally why I stick to the same types of topics, whether it's popular or not. So I guess whoever wants to read about it, it's here. And if it gets popular one day, that's cool. And if it's not, that's okay.
Cool. Yeah, I guess that's the way to go about publishing on Medium when you're not one of the mainstream topics. Because even we are somewhat in that category because we are reasonably popular, but we are not the kind of thing Medium always puts up on the front page.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. I think with Medium, I mean, if people want to conform and do like the popular topics, they can. But I feel like the reason I write online is just I want to share my authentic self and talk about the things I care about. So I think that's why I just stick with the topics that interest me.
Paul, would you say that's true for you as well? I mean, do you try to write something that people will want to read and that will get views, or is it more like you have something to say and you just share it and whoever reads it?
Yeah,
Because
just
for me, I think it's a bit of both.
I just want to share interesting stuff. I don't really like look at the clubs or whatever. Is it still clubs, right? Yeah, all that stuff.
Says everything about how much you look at clubs.
Yeah, I just like I like to like interesting stuff. I like put it out there and hopefully people read it. Because if you like history, I guess you will search for stuff like that. But if you don't, I sometimes hope that it's still interest. Sometimes I try to make titles as interesting as I can, kind of to be catchy. But yeah, I don't go too crazy on like, because I don't know, there is not much in like, I don't like. I try to write something that takes people mind of every day rather than something that will kind of bring them back to every day. I guess I don't know.
Sure. I think at this point we can kind of open up for exclusively audience questions. Maybe, Padri, if you think we can get into answering snippet-only questions as well.
Yeah, let's start with questions to Paul. So if anyone in the audience has something to ask him, you can do it now, and we'll wait a minute for that.
In the meantime, I'm going to plug our website. You can find us at snippetmag.com. I will put it in the chat. Go read some of our work. I hope you'll enjoy it. We try and write so that everyone at whatever level will be able to understand and relate to the writing in some ways. It's written by a really diverse group of authors. And subscribe if you can, and you will receive weekly updates.
Yeah, Usha, you can speak.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
So I'm sorry, I keep asking, but Paul, as a children's librarian, I really feel that children are fascinated by histories of, unusual places, people, etc. So have you ever considered doing books, actually? And this would be a good way to introduce children to history. I'm sure, Deepa, you would agree, as a history teacher, that it's a hook to get them to start reading about history. And I know that in the library, they always make a beeline for books called Strange Histories or Unusual or, Strange Tales and things like that. So yeah, young children would be really fascinated. Have you considered doing that? I would urge you as a librarian to do it. Thank you.
I thought about it, but yeah, I'm not sure if. Well, I wanted to write all these articles for my publications and kind of put it in a book, I guess, in like ebook or something. But it would be an interesting thing to do, but I never considered it before. But yeah, it's definitely something in a Asimov way to do it, to put it together and make it accessible to children. I find a lot of a lot of children who get interested in history. Sometimes they get interested in it through other medium, like games or like computer games or some historical documentaries or even shows.
Yeah, please do keep it in mind. Thank you.
Yeah, I will.
Can I just can I say something?
Sure.
Yeah. So I try and look for primary material or material that was created at the time and just excerpts. And currently I found for Mughal history, Babur's memoirs, Akbar's memoirs on the net. And yeah, I like looking at a period through the eyes and feelings of somebody who lived at that time.
Yeah, it's always very interesting to find a historical book that actually was written back then, and see and when it's actually a person was there or at least lived at the time, because a lot of historical books are written way after the event, and it's really fascinating. One of the well, it's not an ancient history, but Churchill about after days between World War One and World War Two, because he lived through it. I found it like super fascinating because he actually talks about events he participate or he lives through or he was kind of part of it, and it makes history much more alive, I guess, and much more immersive.
Yeah. I mean, recently I've been sourcing newspapers from the time, and because I've been trying to find out about my great grandmother who lived in the early 1900s, and I found out that there was the largest national selling daily in North India was called The Leader, and she reported in it. So I don't know, but this I found out through the net. So that's interesting because it's sort of searching through and then going to the primary sources.
I guess what makes history so gripping is that it's all about stories. It's about this is what happened and this is how we got here.
Sometimes I wish there were more of ways to actually go to the source, but on many occasions there is not much to go to. But it would be incredible if you can actually go to the news articles and actually read it from that time. Like I have a book, it's called The Book of the Dead by the New Yorker or something, where they have collection of articles actually from that time when the event happens. And it's quite interesting because it's a little bit different, and the way they talk about the events is a little bit different. There is no filter of time, I guess, no skewing, just makes it. Oh, and when they talk about people in a little bit of a different way, because they actually lived through times when those people affect those times, kind of thing. It's really interesting.
On that note, I think we can wrap this up. Anyone has final questions for Paul or any snippet specific questions? We can answer one or two, but I think we can wrap it up.
Biba wanted to ask about how Snipêtte started, I think.
Yeah, actually, I didn't know anything about Snipêtte, so you can tell me later as well. That's fine. If anybody else has a question, but I'm very interested to learn what you're doing, your process. So I don't want to take up time if somebody else would like to ask. I'll be in touch with you too. Yeah, or you can.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Just give somebody else a chance. Yeah. Or if nobody's asking, you can tell me very briefly.
But you want to take this one?
Yeah, I guess the short version is when Manas and I discovered Medium, then we were anyway writing things, like each writing things. And when we discovered Medium, we thought, let's try to start a publication here. And that's basically how we started. So we decided to publish an article every week. And then for about a year or so, it was just Manasa and me writing an article every week, or we would take turns to write. And then at some point we started asking more authors if they'd like to write. Or I don't know how exactly the process started, but at some point we started actually searching for authors. And in fact, Paul was one of the first people to follow us, and then he was one of our first authors as well. So he's been with us for a long time. Yeah, and now we've kind of outgrown Medium in the sense they have some restrictions on when people follow you, you don't know their email, so you can't get in touch with them directly, or you can't export your mailing list. There are some formatting issues, or we set up some automated systems like sending out an email every time a new article comes out. And when Medium changed their website, then our systems came down. We had to rework them. So eventually we decided to start our own website. And then after some time we started, we got feedback from some people saying that they'd like to read this kind of thing in print. So now we started a print version, and that's where we are at now.
Our team is also bigger now. We have two junior editors, Akhil and Nia. Do you guys want to say hi? You've seen Nia. She asked a question earlier.
Yeah.
Hi. Sorry, my net's been really bad throughout, so I haven't been able to put my video on.
But yeah, the four of us right now are the Snipêtte team.
Great, thanks.
And if you want to see a print issue, well, here's one example. I don't know if you can see this.
That's great. Lovely.
Yeah. Okay. Meena, you can speak.
How do you guys design the covers and stuff?
Yeah, I was just trying to say that the print version is really very nice. It's very easy to read also, and it's easy to reread also.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thanks, Paul, for the very interesting question.
Thanks.
Somebody asked how we design the covers.
Yeah, Vedika.
Yeah. Hi.
So the covers are, we pick by committee one of the illustrations from the 12 articles that get published over the course of the quarter. So the publication, I should explain, is an anthology of the all of the weekly articles that get published over 3 months, and it comes out 4 times a year. So we together just pick the cover page we think is most interesting, and that becomes the cover.
Nice.
In fact, that process is going to start now for the next issue. So we have I think we have a little more than 12 articles, and then each of us will do a short list of the 4 that we like the best, and then we'll try to pick from that top 4. We'll vote on we'll see which are the common ones, and then vote on the best one from that. It's a whole process, which is very fun because we get to see all the illustrations.
That's cool.
So yeah, this is us plugging the Snipêtte analog version. Subscribe.
Yep. You go to snipinbag.com and there's a subscribe button in the menu which you can click on.
I put the link to our website in the chat, so if you want to go see, you can go ahead and do that.
We'll also add it to the YouTube description once this is over. So that's for our YouTube watchers.
Yes. Is there anything else anyone wants to ask? Okay, I think we will end this here. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. It was really nice having you here. Thank you for your questions and participating. And if you're on YouTube, thank you for tuning in. It means a lot to us. We are Snipêtte Magazine.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks a lot.